It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. So I've been promising this one for a little while, and I wanted to go through it. NGinX Proxy Manager. This is an amazing little piece of software. It's open source, of course. It's free. It's self-hosted. But what it gives you is the ability to run a lot of like Docker servers, or just regular servers and virtual machines, or servers on different machines on your home network. And then basically only open up your network for port 80 and port 443 and point that to the machine that's running NGinX Proxy Manager. And then through NGinX Proxy Manager, you proxy the traffic from there out to the machine that's actually running the server you want to access. Before we get into this, I want to say thank you so much to all my patrons at Patreon and all of my subscribers on YouTube. You guys really make it so that I want to keep doing these things, and you make it so worth it that I get good comments and that I get good feedback from you guys all the time. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I try to answer comments as much as I can, and I try to answer on Telegram whenever you ping me on there as well. I just really appreciate everything you guys have done, and all the subscribers and all the people who are watching these videos. It really means a lot to me. So let me just give you some examples here. So here I've got NGinX Proxy Manager running on my home network, and you can see that I point my actual system to different servers that I'm trying to run inside of my network. So the ones with the 172 address are actually Docker installs on the same machine as an NGinX Proxy Manager. The ones with the 192 addresses are actual other machines on my internal network that I'm pointing to from this machine that's running NGinX Proxy Manager. So here I've got a bunch of different servers and services that I run that I can access by using NGinX Proxy Manager, and I haven't had to open up a bunch of ports. I don't have port 3000 open. I don't have port 9046 open. I don't have port 8051 open. I don't have any of those ports open on my network. My network only has ports open to let 80 and 443 through so that I can get to these sites, because basically that says go to NGinX Proxy Manager and then give me the site that I requested. If I send a request to NGinX Proxy Manager for a site that doesn't exist, so if I say anything.routemehome.org, if that gets to my NGinX Proxy Manager, it's going to come up and just give you this congratulations page. It's just going to tell you, hey, you made it to the Proxy Manager, but I don't know where else to take you, so this is what I'm going to show you. And that's really great, because that means that I'm keeping my network as secure as I can. Now, if I actually want to go see something that's running, I can put in analytics.routemehome.org. And what's going to happen when I hit enter is that's going to go out here and it's going to go, oh, hey, I see this request you just made for analytics.routemehome.org. And I know that that's running in Docker here on this same machine. So I'm going to point you to that Docker install at your port that you've set up for that particular piece of software. And I'm going to let that return back to the person requesting it. So when I hit enter, it goes out there and it says, oh, I see that. And then it gives me my login information, and I can hit login and I can see my actual information for what I'm getting for traffic on my website. So that's how NGinX Proxy Manager works. Now I can do the same thing if I do, I think it's mymusic. Yeah, so again, if I do that, I get Apache, and Apache wants to load up so that I can actually go listen to my music that I'm running here on my site. So there's a lot of things you can do with NGinX Proxy Manager, but there's a lot of questions that come up when you use something like that as well. So I want to go through those things, because when it comes back to this, you might be saying, well, I mean, couldn't anybody access this site? Well, yeah, but you saw there's a login for it, and the same thing here, right? There's a login for this. So yes, anybody could technically access this site, but there's a login that's protecting some of my stuff. Now, if I want to protect it even more, there's some options inside of NGinX Proxy Manager that let you do that through access control lists. So I want to go through some of these things, as well as tell you how do you actually secure NGinX Proxy Manager itself, because maybe you're not running this on your home network. Maybe you're running it on a VPS like DigitalOcean or Linode or SSDNodes or hundreds of others that are out there that you have. First thing I want to cover is it's very easy to get this set up. You just click here on Setup. It's going to take you down the page to his instructions for setup. Now these are kind of minimal instructions in my opinion. So as you go down, it gets more complex. I just like to go out to his GitHub page right here. So that's also linked here on the main page right here at the top right. I just go to the GitHub page, scroll down, and right here is Quick Setup. And right here we've got some information that we need. Now I've gone through this in several other videos. I cover this on shownotes.opensourceisawesome.com in several blog posts as well. So if you're ever wondering where this is at, it's out there, but I'm going to go through it again for you right now. So the first thing you actually want to do is have a terminal open on the machine you want to run this on. So today we're going to run it on this machine that I'm actually recording on because I don't have it set up yet, and I can show you that right here. When I do Docker PS, there's actually no Docker stuff running at all right now. So I'm going to clear that out. Now the first thing you want to set up is Docker and Docker Compose in order to run this. And I have videos out there that show you how to do that. I will link them in the show notes and in the description for the video. And it's really important that you get that installed first, but it's not a hard thing to install those things. In fact, I've got a script that you can run to install it if you're running Ubuntu 18.04 or Ubuntu 20.04. But after you do that, then you need to get NGinX Proxy Manager installed, and it installs into Docker. Now, if you run Portainer, you can absolutely use Portainer to get this set up and installed. I have Portainer on my other server. I don't have it on this one, so I'm just going to do this straight up to the command line. This is really not difficult. So first thing I want to do, I'm in my home directory here. So I'm going to make this just a little bit larger font for you guys. How's that? So first thing I'm going to do is make a directory, and I'm going to call it npm. You can call it NGinX PM, whatever makes you happy. It's just something that's got to have a different name from all the other ones. So we could do NGinX PM. That's fine. We're going to cd into that. So just cd NGinX-PM. And now we're inside that directory, and you can do an ls to see that it's empty. Now we need to create two files. So we're going to do nano, and the first file is config.json. Make sure you spell it just like that, and when you hit enter, it's going to take you into Nano. We're going to go back here to this web page, and we're just going to copy and highlight and copy. So Control-C to copy off the web page, and then we're going to come back to Nano. You can do Control-Shift-V like Victor to paste. And then you've got a few things you've got to change right here. So MySQL, we don't want to change that. Host, we don't want to change that. Name, so we can change this. And we can change this to be whatever we want, but it's npm. It's NGinX Proxy Manager. See, I almost said Node Package Manager, so it's a little confusing sometimes. So you can change this to something if you want to. But the user, I recommend changing this. Use your own name. I'm going to use my name in this case. And then the password, absolutely, you should change this to something that's a strong password. Don't use the one that I'm about to use here, but you should use upper lowercase symbols, more than 8 to 10 characters. If you can do like 12, that's great. And then numbers. So don't spell a word, just use something random. Just remember what it is. You know, if you need to, just copy it like this. Just highlight it and then do Control-Shift-C to copy. Now we're going to save this file before we do anything else. We're going to say Control-O. Check that the name is still config.json and then hit enter to save it. And then we're going to do Control-X to exit out of it. So now if we do ls, we see there's our config.json file. Now we're going to make one more file, nano, and we're going to do docker-compose.yml. Again, we open it up and it's blank, so we're going to go back to the web page here, and we're just going to highlight all of this text that's in this second block. We're going to copy it, and I can scroll this up for you guys so you can see it better if you want to, but we're about to paste it into the other thing. But we're going to highlight that, copy it. We're going to go back to the terminal. We're going to paste with Control-Shift-V. And there's a few things that we need to adjust. Now, as you go through this particular file, you're going to see a few things, and I want to talk about it. This is the image it's going to pull down for NGinX Proxy Manager. Don't change this. The ports, you do not want to change these ports. You want to make sure that your host machine has port 80, port 81, and port 443 available, because the left side is the host and the right side is the container. And in this case, we want to leave this exactly like it is. We do not want to change this. You've got a few volumes that it's going to create. That's fine. You don't need to do anything here. Just let it create these volumes. And then down here, it's going to pull the MariaDB database system. So this is the next image. Don't mess with the image name. Now, your root password, you want to change this to whatever you can think of. Don't make it the same as the other password you made. Just make it something strong and long, okay? Something that somebody couldn't guess easily. Then here, for the database, you're going to leave it npm. Unless you renamed it on the other screen, leave it the same. For user, put in whatever username you used. I used Brian, so that's what I'm going to put. And for the password, now you can do Control-Shift-V. So right here, once you erase this, you just do Control-Shift-V and it'll paste in the password that you copied from your other screen, your config.json. If you don't have it still in your clipboard, just do Control-O, save, Control-X, and you can go and do, once you're out of that, you can just do nano, or you can just do cat config.json, and you can just copy this right here. Control-Shift-C, nano docker compose.yaml, and then you can come back down here and you can get rid of whatever's in the space and Control-Shift-V, and you've got the same password that you have in your config file. You want to make sure that your database, your user, and your password are all exactly the same. They have to match. Once you're done with those changes, hit Control-O, make sure it still says docker compose.yml, hit enter to save, and then Control-X to get out of it. We've done everything we need to do now, assuming that you've already got Docker and Docker Compose installed. So now we're going to bring up NGinX Proxy Manager. To do that, we're going to type in docker-compose up-d, which means run it as a daemon. So this is going to tell Docker, and you need to spell Docker correctly, don't spell it like I did, Docker Compose up-d, and then we're going to hit enter. It's going to go pull those images down. Now it'll just take a few minutes for it to pull these down and get everything up and running, so just be patient. Alright, when you get finished, you should have something that says, app_1 and db_1, and it should say done and done. And you can verify with docker ps. And now you see that we've got a couple of things running. Now this is a big mess, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it back down. A little bit cleaner looking here. So you can see you've got NGinX Proxy Manager at latest running, and you've got MariaDB4 ARIA at 10.4 running, which is what we need. So I'm just going to bring this back up for you guys, and we'll clear that out. Now, back here in our browser, we can actually go to our home, so localhost, and then :81 if you're logged onto that actual machine. If not, use the IP address of that machine at port 81. And if you do this correctly, you should come up to the login screen. Now sometimes NGinX Proxy Manager just doesn't get installed or started up right in Docker, and you may get a 505 error, 502 bad gateway error. If you do, that's okay, it happens, but your default credentials are admin at example.com. And the default password is CHANGEME, C-H-A-N-G-E-M-E. Hit sign in. You don't want to save that because you're about to change it. Change this to the correct information. So whatever you want for your email. And then it's going to ask you to change the password. So this is the same one you just typed in, so C-H-A-N-G-E-M-E. And then you're going to come down here and type a strong password. And hit save. Once you do that, you'll see that you've got your administrator here, and now you can tell it, sure, save my credentials if you want to. And we've got NGinX Proxy Manager actually up and running on this machine. So this kind of step is done. Now I'm logged in through localhost, so I can actually log out. And I'm going to go back to this thing through the IP address, which is 192.168. Let me make sure I get the right one typed in here. 168.7.221, and again, port 81 is how you get to the admin console. So here we are. I came back to it. Now I'm going to type in my proper credentials, and I can tell it to save. That really wants to save, but it doesn't need to. So I'm logged into NGinX Proxy Manager, but I don't have any hosts set up yet. So I don't have anything to quote-unquote host. That's okay. There's a few things about NGinX Proxy Manager itself that we may want to set up to host. So as you can see, I can access this through port 81. Now anybody on my network could access this through port 81, technically. Now they need login credentials to get to it and actually do anything in it, but it's not through SSL, it's just through HTTP. So if I want to make this accessible with HTTPS, I need to create an entry in NGinX Proxy Manager and then secure it with itself. Now, because I don't actually have a domain pointing to this, I'm not going to use this one, but one of the things you'll need is a domain name that you're going to point to your actual record. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to show you how I did that. I'm going to go to godaddy.com. Now, regardless of who your registrar is for your domain, you want to make sure you go to your DNS management section. So in GoDaddy, that's where I'm at right now. And what I've got set up is basically two records. I've got the @ record, which is like my primary domain, which is routemehome.org, which points to my home IP address. The second thing I did in order to make it so that I don't have to come out and create an A record for every domain that I create, which you can see sometimes I do it anyways. But I don't have to because I created an asterisk record and I pointed it to my home IP address. So anything that I type in, whether it's here or not, as long as it has routemehome.org on the end of it, it tries to go to my home IP address, and then NGinX Proxy Manager tries to handle that and see if it can route it to an actual site. And if it can't, then it just gives you the congratulations page. So that's how I do this. That's how I set up my name server in this case for the one that points to my home, just because it makes it easy and because I do these videos every week, and sometimes I do a couple of videos in a week, and I don't want to come out here and set up an A record every single time I do it. I just would rather type something in and make it easy to get to. Now, if you want to, you can come and set an A record for @, and then you can actually set the rest of these as CNAME records instead of A records. So let's just say that I'm going to do, I'm just going to call this manage. Okay? So let's go and we'll create an actual A record. So I'm going to say add an A record. I'm going to tell it it's a CNAME. So in this case, I'm going to tell it it's a CNAME. I'm going to call this manage. I'm going to say point to the @. So that's just telling it, hey, wherever this is pointed, that's where I want this to point. So I'm just telling it it's going to point to the same IP address. Now on GoDaddy, I do this. I go and take out the 3, that turns it to 600 seconds, that's 10 minutes, and then I hit save. And now I should have manage, it's a CNAME, and it's @. So it's going to point to my home. Now whether that takes or not, it's going to point to my home because I have this asterisk record here. But if I wanted to point that to some other IP, like this one, I have VPN set up, it points to a different IP address. Right here, you can see that I've got remote set up and it points to a different IP address. So there's different things that I do have set up that point to different IP addresses, and if I want that, I need to come set a specific record for that. But in this case, I set up a CNAME, and it's going to point back to the @, and then whether I set it up or not, my star would have caught that. But for your own benefit, if you do want to do this, then you can set it up this way with a CNAME record, and each site you want to set up to point to the same place. If you don't want to have this star record, you can just set it up as a CNAME and point it to @, and then give it 10 minutes or so, and it'll be pointing to the right place. Alright, so now I want to secure NGinX Proxy Manager to itself. So while I showed you how to install and get NGinX Proxy Manager running, I'm going to go back to my other server where I run it here, and I'm going to show you how to set it up to be secured to itself. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a host entry, and I'm going to call that exactly what I just said I want it to be, which is manage.routemehome.org. I'm going to hit tab so that it creates kind of this little chip. If you don't do that, it's going to just disappear from the field whenever you leave the field. Here, I'm going to point it to itself. Now, NGinX Proxy Manager is running inside of Docker. So I can use that same Docker IP address that I use here in the background for the rest of these sites. So it's 172.17.0.1. Now I know my admin console runs on port 81, so I'm going to type that into there. I don't know that I need WebSocket support, but I am going to block common exploits. I'm going to leave it publicly accessible for now, and before I do anything else, I'm just going to save. And then I'm going to go click on manage.routemehome.org. Right here, I'm going to click on the URL and see if it opens up and gives me my site. It does. So I got to my NGinX Proxy Manager login page. That's awesome. But it's still not secured. It's telling me that there, which is okay. Step one's done. I always test before I keep going because it makes it easier to troubleshoot as you go along. So I'm going to go back down here to manage, and I'm going to go over to the right. I'm going to Click on the little drop down here with the three dots. I'm going to click on Edit. Now I'm going to click on SSL because this is the next step. We want secured sockets, right? So I'm going to click this. I'm going to click Request a new SSL certificate. I'm going to say Force SSL because I don't want anybody getting there without going through SSL, especially myself. Make sure your email address is filled in so that the Let's Encrypt site can email you if there's a problem with any of your certificates. This is very important. They don't spam you, they just let you know when there's something going on with your certificates. And then click on the I agree to the terms of service. If you want to read their terms of service first, you can click on this link and it'll let you read that as well. Again, click Save. This time be patient while it works. It's going to try to go get you a Let's Encrypt certificate for the site that you just set up. If that modal goes away like that with no error message, you probably are successful. And the way to test that is just, again, click here. Now we've got it, and you can see that it is secured. And I can log in. So I can put in my username and my password. And if I get the right password, it will log me in. Alright, once I'm logged in, so it wants to know if I want to save it. I don't need to save it, it's fine. But now I'm back at my site and I'm doing it through a secure SSL layer, so I've secured this. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, okay, I mean, you secured it to itself, great, good job. I know. Now it's accessible from the internet, but we're going to fix that too. So that's where access lists come in. And here you can see I've got a couple of access lists that I've created in the past. So I don't need this local only one because it actually does the same thing as home IP. I just did that for a video recently. Oops, I didn't want to change it. I want to delete it. There we go, yes. So here I've got home IP set up. Now I'll show you exactly what I did to set this up. So when you want to set up an access list, you're going to hit Add a new access list. You're going to give it a name. So in your case, you may want to call it home IP, or you could just call it home only. Whatever you want to call it doesn't matter. I'll come back to this little checkbox in a minute. Authorization. So right here, you want to list anybody that would be authorized to access this URL, and it's going to basically present them with some authentication information before it even tries to take them to the page. So if they try to get to that page, it's going to say, hey, you need to log in, and if they don't, it's going to cancel that request. Okay? So we're going to put in my username and my password that I want to use. And then we're going to go over here to the next tab, and this is allow. So this is for an IP address. Now this is public IP addresses. So basically it checks your public IP address to see like where are you trying to log in from, and if it doesn't match one of the ones in the allow, then it's going to deny. So if you want to use IP as your method for getting logged in, then you would need to know your public IP address. To get that, you can use something like ipchicken.com. And when it comes up, you can just grab that public IP address. You can come back over to your NGinX Proxy Manager and you can tell it, there's my public IP, and you can hit save. But before you hit save, remember we set up two different things. So right now, not only do I have to be logging in for my public IP, but it's also going to prompt me before I even get to the normal login page with credentials that I need to have to get to the site. Now if you're like, you know what, either I need to have this or I need to be coming in from this IP address, you can go here and you can check the accept any. So either this one or this one. If you uncheck this, it becomes and. I have to have this one and I have to be on this IP address. So you kind of make up your decision on how you're going to set this up. So here I'm going to say accept any. I'm going to say save. Okay. So now I've got this home only option. And what I can do is I can go back to my hosts. I can come down to manage. I'm again going to click on edit. And right here, I'm going to say I want home only as my option for this one. I'm going to save that. Now you want to do that after you get your certificate from Let's Encrypt. Because when you try to get that certificate, if you already have an access list set up, Let's Encrypt's going to try to get in and it's not coming from your IP address, and it's not got your credentials, so it's going to fail because it can't access this site on port 80, which is what it needs to be able to do. So again, make sure when you do this that you have got this set as publicly accessible when you're getting the certificate here on the SSL page. Once you're done with that, you can come back in and you can change this to whatever access list you want. And you can create multiple access lists. They can all have different rules and different people and different users. And then you can add that to the site right here. Once you're done, hit save. Now, I want to set one up that only allows credentials and not my IP, or else it's going to come through every single time. So let me cancel this real quick. I'm going to go back over here to my access lists. And I'm going to edit this home only. And I'm actually going to change the name to be just me. And I'm going to change this to not just be my IP address, but also my credentials. So it has to be me, and I have to be on my home network. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go back to my hosts. I'm going to go back to my manage here, and I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to pick just me, just to make sure that it took it, and hit save, just to make sure that it takes. So I'm going to open up another browser, and I'm going to try to get into my console again. And you see here now it presents me with this login screen. So you can see there I had to log in and authenticate first of all just to get to the page. Then it brings up the page, and now I have to log into the actual web application. So it gives you an extra layer of security. So that's how you secure NGinX Proxy Manager to itself. As you run through these things, you may hit a few hurdles and a few hiccups. That's okay, it happens. Reach out to the maker, go to GitHub, ask questions, see if you can get some help making sure those things are running correctly. I do my best to help you guys, but a lot of times it's hard for me to help you because I'm not sure what your setup's like, and I'm not super familiar with the back end of how this software works. So I can show you the front end, and I can show you the things that I do that work for me, but sometimes you may need to set up some things for yourself that are a little bit different. Before we finish, in the past I've shown you to set up things to the public IP address of the actual application, and if you're running Docker in particular, don't do that. So on the old video I did show that. On this video I want to make sure that you understand you should use the Docker 0 address if you're running the software on the same system as you're running NGinX Proxy Manager. So if you're running the Proxy Manager and it's on the same system as another server that you're running, you should use that Docker 0 address and then the port number that you set up for that particular server, and that's going to make it much more secure because it never leaves this machine. It goes from NGinX Proxy Manager straight to that Docker machine and back. And there's nothing really leaving the machine, so you've got encrypted traffic all the time when it's outside of that server host. I hope this little brief overview of how to do some extra things in NGinX Proxy Manager is really useful to you and that you guys get a lot out of it. I think this is a really, really great tool. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends about this, and I'll talk to you next time.